As much as I'm literal and real, he says, I'm also an important symbol to you and your kind. Think about what a dragon means to you. Think about the unstoppable force, but also the majesty and wonder. Your kind and what you'd call your history have both hated and revered us because of our capacity, our ability, our power, our beauty, our majesty. And understand that, of course, within you, you have reptilian DNA. It's very foundational to your very survival of what you are. As a species, as an individual, and all throughout your universe, there's been conflicts and misunderstandings between different species, just like within your own physical form and within your own emotions. There's conflict between different chakras, different frequencies of energy. Your heart being somewhat in the center, I'm aware that this individual is wondering if perhaps he's using too much of his own heart or his heart is too open. From my perspective, I would say no. I would say ideally, the goal, at least for my kind, from my awareness, from my perspective, is to have all your chakras simultaneously as functional as possible. So your heart being very powerful, a very beautiful thing, as you know, there's no reason to believe that you need to shut down one thing or reduce one thing in order to increase the other. In fact, what I would suggest is actually what's come up here is an opportunity to enhance your groundedness and to simply own and enhance and channel more of the energies from your own lower chakras. The solar plexus, which is your individuality, your self-worth, your confidence in the space you take up, your sense of self in the scheme of things. Reading from you this thing you call guilt is related to fear, and understand always anything that is rooted in a fear is not in your best interest. Guilt does not serve you at all. Guilt is an illusion. Guilt causes more what you might consider mistakes, which from your higher self's perspective aren't necessarily mistakes because they're still valuable experiences. However, reading from the questions of your mind about these energies, understand that guilt is just a belief that man invented. Well, not necessarily human man. The concept's been around since before there were even humans, but the idea of guilt permeates your planet, but it's just an illusion, and it's just a blindness. And while you're being blinded by that, you tend to trip on other objects that you're not seeing. So there's no judgment here, but to our kind, guilt is useless. We do not entertain it at all. So understanding that we're reading this from what you call male energy. To own your power is a thing that your species has been dissuaded or disillusioned or pushed away from over a great deal of time. And it's even in what you could call your DNA, that your ancestors lived this way as well. There's what I would call a flightiness in your aura, even in this vessel. And as he said, he tends to integrate our energies better than the vast majority of humans currently on your planet, and yet still, this human monkey type DNA, it's so flighty. It's hard for you to hold on to groundedness and hold on to your own willpower and to set a path and know that you're doing it and to feel no guilt and to feel no distraction from your purpose. Our kind are very strong this way. So there's a part of you looking to integrate and own this part of yourself now. Now, understanding that in your incarnation, the situation you call being a teacher to the younger ones of your kind. And as you say, as you understand, perhaps the more female, as you would call it, or the more yin side of your energy is much more conducive for the vast majority of what you're doing or being as a teacher in that environment. However, as your higher self and subconscious and even consciously, you're coming to realize this now. Ultimately, as a holistic beings, there's no escaping from the different energies that are yours. You can push them away and let someone else wield them, and this is what most humans in your planet are currently doing. They're not owning the energy of their lower chakras and their more reptilian, you could say, parts of their DNA and energy. Understand, not all of that energy is what you'd call reptilian per se, but our kind, and this is a broad, generalized, sweeping statement, of course. Myself being an earth dragon, not affiliated with any reptilian empire or anything that the humans have such a suppressed fear of due to other incarnations and experiences. I'm simply speaking energetically from what you would call the DNA of being a reptilian type being. You have this within you, and it grounds you strongly if you'll interact with it more. What does this mean? It means stronger connection to your physical self. It means confidence. It means willpower, that you know your will is iron, and when you decide to do something, it shall be done. This energy is judged in your world, and has been for longer than you would even believe in what you call years. It's been judged as evil or unacceptable and so forth. However, let's look at this a little bit closer, what purpose this has served. Those who wield all of what you're calling the power on the surface of this earth are simply willing to interact with this part of their own DNA. They're willing to take all the resources, they're willing to take all the say in what gets done, and they're willing to shoulder all the responsibility that comes with all that power. Doesn't mean they're the best equipped to do so. It doesn't mean all the decisions they make work out in their own best interest or anyone else's. It simply means that where all the power, as you call it, on the surface of your planet is going, and many of you recognize there's this extreme imbalance, why some are wielding all the influence over everything, and the vast majority of the rest have so little say in what's being done or happening or occurring and so forth. Well, this is what we're talking about. The same way many in what you might call the airy-fairy version of the New Age community point fingers and say, all the world leaders, they're all reptilians, they're all evil reptilian beings. Understand that as long as you are seeing them as evil or something that you would judge, that keeps you separated from your own power. That keeps you separated from your own groundedness and your own wielding of the very powers that you're judging. This isn't right or wrong necessarily, it simply is what it is. So what's happening for you now is your higher self that has decided that you're in a state where you're ready to challenge yourself, you could say, with integrating more of the sources of energy and power that you have. So again, it's not that you've been operating from too much of a place of open-heartedness, it's simply that more grounding now at this time would amplify your effect overall. And I am speaking overall in life in general as a whole, for you, the whole being that you are. I am not lying to you and saying that in wielding more of your male fire energy, it'll make the job of teacher for the younglings on your surface any easier. In fact, it might very much make it more challenging, as you're realizing. However, the truth, the simple truth is, these are your energies and your powers. People in your world tend to live in when I say your world, I mean the world of men, the ideas of men, the ideologies of men that you've grown up in. These ideologies and patterns have the people, the humans as you call them, owning only fractions of their energy and pushing away the rest and deciding to live in a certain frequency. And if left to their own devices, without the intervention of their guides or their higher self, many humans would spend their entire life only operating through a few of their energy centers, the ones that they're accepting of and not judgmental against. However, understand that there's no escaping that in the long run, or the big picture, if you will, ultimately you're going to own all these energies and expand yourself. These are the energies of this universe. You can call them light and dark, you can call them nice and mean, you can call them gentle and aggressive, you can call them any number of things, but they are what is, and they are you as well. So you're challenging yourself now to integrate these things and find how they apply and how they best serve. Again, I don't presume to misguide you in the idea that having more fiery male energy will make your teaching situation easier or better. I will say this though. In the instances where this part of your nature shows itself, if you judge this as a mistake or wrong, you're creating resistance, and what you resist persists. So this experience of doing what you're considering wrong and judging will keep repeating itself. If you can accept your male energies as not wrong, simply understand that this fiery energy maybe isn't ideal in what you call a classroom environment or a teaching environment, especially for younger students. Even though these energies are not ideal, these energies are real and true. So when you display these energies in front of your students, understand that from your higher self's perspective, there's a potential gain to each of those students in seeing you do this, because they're seeing a part of themselves as well. They're seeing something that they are going to be faced with and already are in their reality in the human experience. So when you say, get more aggressive than you would choose to, or show more fire in that environment, if you respond to that by feeling guilt and shame, this is the pattern that they're picking up from you as well. So that in their own, what you call future, when they experience this emotion or the fiery part of themselves coming up and being active, they will reinforce the idea to judge this about themselves, to try to push it away, to deny it, and never learn how to properly integrate it. Now understand, I'm not saying that it's your responsibility to teach them how to do this. I'm simply reflecting that from your higher self's perspective, these students can gain very much from seeing you experience these things and own them. It doesn't mean that you have to try to convince them that that fiery energy is ideal for the classroom, but to simply be real and own elements of who you are and acknowledge that you do have a fiery side to you. And many of them do as well. In fact, they all do to one degree or another, even the females. So in seeing you go through this, if you can say, carry yourself in a way that it does not involve shame or regret, to simply acknowledge that perhaps that energy is not ideal for the classroom and yet it is a very real part of yourself, will help them to be more accepting of the parts of themselves which come up in situations that they might consider unideal, because this is going to be happening in their experience. This is what happens in the human experience. Your vast array of energy centers and emotions is so profoundly fluctuating compared to almost anything else you might say is out there. But this is the human conundrum or challenge or situation, and you can replace all those words with opportunity, of course. So even when you do something that part of you would want to still judge as a mistake, if you can let go of the judgment, your resistance will drop, and then you won't find yourself being overpowered by something that's coming up to cause you to have to look at this, to have to face this, to have to challenge yourself with the opportunity to integrate more energies. Now, part of this, part of what's being reflected from your higher self here, is the opportunity to learn how to channel which parts of yourself and which parts of your connections, entities and otherwise, energies that you can tap into. How, when, and where to channel these things. This is what you might call mastery from a human experience, from a human level. What's been traditionally going on the surface of this planet with your kind for a very long time that I've been aware of, and others of my kind, we simply observe. So this is a little bit of an outside perspective, but sometimes it's better to hear an outside perspective from one who can see the forest itself instead of just the individual trees. What's been common to your kind is that when energies come up they don't understand within themselves, and the society or the culture that they're within has already built belief systems against these energies, you simply repress it. You believe that you're denying it and somehow escaping it, but it does not work this way. These energies never go away. They are yours. What can happen, though, is if you're not owning these energies, something else will. So if you felt disempowered or felt like your willpower hasn't panned out as well as it should, or that you've had trouble setting a goal and staying focused, or what's mostly just referred to under the umbrella of being ungrounded, which is extremely common for human beings, that is where my energy is here to help you. I literally live in a more grounded electromagnetic environment than you, and I literally embody what it means to be grounded to a degree that humans can't even understand. So tapping into my energy and understanding that yes, I am a dragon and I do breathe fire and I do have spikes on my skin and armor, and I am incredibly forceful and powerful, and I am incredibly confident, and I feel no guilt for anything I've ever done. You don't have to try to be a dragon in your human experience, but understand it's an important component of what you are in order to be whole. The similar part of your DNA that resonates with this frequency is something for you to own. Again, I'm not saying this necessarily is easy, but you didn't incarnate into the human experience because any of it was easy. You incarnated into it because you saw the vast opportunity of it from your higher self's perspective. So I would advise to you that owning these energies is incredibly valuable to you at the higher self level, to you as an individual, to what treasures you're taking from this incarnation. And again, when you experience too much fire, you might say, to be ideal for the environment of teaching. If you own these energies, acknowledge that it's a part of what you are. It's not right or wrong. It's simply not ideal for that environment. You will help these students in doing so to understand this about themselves, that they will be dealing with many energies that they don't fully understand or even necessarily accept about themselves. But the sooner they learn to accept and own and stop judging, the resistance will go down, the fear level will go down, and then what you're calling mistakes will go down as well. And it becomes easier to own these things and use them to your advantage. I'm reading that this individual does have strong physical outlets. This is important. You connect with me there as well. And of course, channeling more of these energies there is very empowering to you as far as becoming more grounded and strongly able to connect with your physical self. Again, it's simply a matter of accessing which energy centers you would choose to at will within yourself. And you'll find that this is much easier to do when you no longer have judgments against certain frequencies of your own energy and connectedness. Again, those judgments create resistance, and resistance creates persistence, you could say. This is like one of these spiritual laws, if you will, looking through your human terminology. It's simply the way things work. The more you struggle against something, the more the struggle grows. So to not struggle, to own it and to stop judging it, and understand that energy is energy and it's yours and it's power and it is needed. For example, and we're not reading that there's a likeliness of this occurring. Yes. Understand I'm not alone down here. I have a few friends reading you as well. However, what I'm getting at here is, let's use an example. Let's say that these students that you feel such a open-hearted, loving tenderness for came under attack by a crazed individual. And it happened so fast there was no time to think. And you were there. If you're tapped in and grounded and connected to my energy or this part of yourself, you would instinctively stop that attack and save all of them. Save their lives without even thinking twice. So the very same energy that you're judging as possibly negative or bad or so forth can be the most profoundly important thing under certain circumstances for those who you love. Again, so it's simply a matter of application. Fire is fire. Let's talk about actual physical fire, as you would call it. The actual substance of fire. It's kept your people alive and protected. Without fire, you wouldn't have survived to where you are now. And yet fire has been used to torture. Fire has been used for the worst cruelty. So this is the trauma, and this is the fear, and this is the confusion that lies within your kind about these parts of their own energies. Because these energies have caused so much pain and destruction, and yet they've also been the reason why you've even survived. So understand that if you're judging these things, you're very much lacking, or you're very much limiting your own ability to interact in a way you might consider more empowering with these parts of yourself. From your higher self's perspective, you've put yourself in this interesting challenge where you have created environments in your incarnation where it's very conducive to pull more from the inside of your nature and the open-heartedness, which you've made leaps and bounds and improvements in within yourself. However, what's coming up now is an opportunity to, as you would say, balance or perhaps expand further in your holisticness and as an individual. So the other side, or a very different frequency, is coming up and looking for integration. I could tell you things to do with this energy, but the truth is it's more important that you decide for yourself. It's more important that you creatively decide what to do with your own yang male energy. And even the things that you consider mistakes, understand that your higher self doesn't see it this way. Your higher self will always have a use for the things that you consider mistakes. So if you can drop your own resistance from your way of thinking, you'll find it easier to access wisdom on how to apply these things, empowering wisdom on how to apply your own male energy. But there are still judgments. There are still judgments which are common to your world because you mean well and you mean to never hurt anyone. And this is understandable. However, remember, under certain circumstances, and again, I'm not predicting this for you, I'm not seeing this headed your way, but under certain circumstances, it is essential to be able to harness the most ferocious part of your fiery dragon-like energy in order to protect and survive those that you would choose to have survive in your world. If your ancestors and if the ancestors of others hadn't tapped into this industry, this energy, this truth, the current version of you would not be there, would not even be able to have this opportunity, because there would be no family line to be born into. Your ancestors have had to tap into their reptilian-like dragon survival, fight tooth and claw and nail, and lose no sleep about it energy many times. All the strains of humans that currently live on your planet are only there because some of their ancestors very deeply tapped into this energy. Or there would be no classroom, there would be no conducive place to grow and practice what it is to be a human. So even though fire can hurt and harm, it's essential and it's powerful. And it is yours. And fire is a good description of what we're talking about here. As you know, I breathe fire. My connection to this element is very strong. My connection to the earth element is also very strong. So in grounding those parts of yourself, the earth element and the fire element become stronger and more clear in your awareness of how much of them you really can tap into. Some perhaps practical advice would be, before entering your teaching environment, to set an intention, to understand that if male energy does come up, there will be no judgment against it. You're simply choosing to tap more into the heart side, the open-heartedness, the yin energy. However, even in a classroom environment, there are times where this commander-like energy you're feeling in yourself is needing expression to some degree. These students have these same energies within them, again, remember. So in you setting an example of how these things can be used to whatever measure you decide is wise, you're actually providing them with insights, providing them with examples that later they'll be able to tap into and understand further in their own experience. Reading from the human mind that is common to your kind, it seems that humans will tend to choose to want to only experience what they consider comfortable or easy or smooth. However, again, from your higher self's perspective, this would be a limitation to your own growth and expansion. So you're being asked to integrate more of what you are, because in doing so, you're becoming a great leader for your kind. And even in the times where you express more of this fire in an environment where you would consider that not ideal, even those opportunities can be used to the benefit of those who are onlooking. But if your judgment is that you've made a mistake or done something wrong, then that's the frequency they're picking up on as well. And they're learning to judge the same thing as unacceptable, bad, and a mistake. And therefore, in the futures of what you're calling their timelines, when they experience these energies in themselves, they will judge themselves accordingly. They will disconnect from their groundedness. They'll disconnect from their own fire, their strength, their willpower, and become ungrounded people who are very easily manipulated by lies and fears and disillusionment in your world. So understand that if you'll own these energies and feel no guilt, you're doing a service. You're doing a service to these students as well. Again, reading energetically the situation, it is more appropriate and it is more proper to use more of what you call yin, more of the female, or more of the heartfelt, or more of the accepting, harmonious, calm, patient energies that you use in your teaching situation. But the idea that there should be no expression of any fire, we would not consider to be accurate either, because again, these individuals have it within them. And even if consciously they don't understand what they're seeing, on a subconscious and on a superconscious level, they are picking up from your interaction with these parts of your energy. It is an influence on them. I don't tell you this to intimidate you or put pressure on you. It's simply illuminating some light on the fact that this is actually an opportunity. So the next time you make what you might consider a mistake in expressing too much of your male fiery energy, I would advise you to use this as an opportunity to help them to understand that this is going to happen to them as well. There are going to be expressions of fire that come out of them at times in life that they consider to be awkward or unacceptable. So the more you can reduce that judgment within yourself and accept that these energies are real, they're true, they exist for good reason, and there's nothing to regret. It simply is what it is. If you feel you've used too much of it, the thing to do is simply reassess how you would choose to deal with that situation in the next time it comes up, and release any judgment or guilt or fear, because again, these things will cause you to spiral into behaviors that you feel like you consider to be out of your own control. But that's because you're creating resistance to what your higher self is bringing to you for integration. This can either be a fight where there's judgment, where you resist parts of yourself and keep judging and pushing them away, and they keep fighting to be integrated, or it can be an acceptance and an understanding that these are part of the great all that is. These are part of the divine energies that have always been and always will be. From the human perspective, you're incarnated in a time and a place and a species that is what you can consider very primitive. So that's why when they look at these things, they have a lot of judgments and fears. But understand that at a higher level, there are species that are very much integrated with all of these energies. And that's how they've moved into more what you might call advanced experiences of what it is to be incarnated. At the higher self level, of course, you're not less advanced than these other beings. It's simply that this human incarnation you're having now is in a species in a time that's quite primitive. And in owning your energies, however you choose to, you are making it easier for this primitive species to do so. You are contributing into the collective consciousness or even the collective unconsciousness, and both these terms are somewhat relevant. You're contributing that. You're contributing the experience of dropping the judgments and integrating the energies that are yours. Whether you ever verbally express this or write it down in a book or anything else, you're contributing that experience into the collective consciousness of your kind, which makes it easier for others of them to ground themselves and accept their more fiery energies or their more aggressive energies. And yes, I have been giving you the idea because really I'm just reflecting this from your higher self, or I wouldn't waste my time because you wouldn't be ready to understand it anyway. I'm reflecting the idea that you're working with now, that aggression and anger are entirely different things. In fact, aggression can be quite fun. Think about the color red. Some people, when they see the color red, they're terrified. It reminds them of blood and aggression and fear. Other people, when they see the color red, they feel exhilarated. It reminds them of fun and action and activity. I'd advise you more to lean towards the latter and understand that these are your energies, so you can choose to perceive them as bad and terrifying and awful and manifest more the experiences that will align with your judgments, or you can choose to see them as fun and empowering and necessary and have more the types of experiences that align with those beliefs. As always with humans in your world, as has been the case up to your current point in time and will continue to be moving forward, it's all about your belief systems or your beliefs, whether you call it a system or not. But it is a system. It's like a I guess what you would call maybe a computer program type system, affecting your reality, affecting the way these energies are experienced by you. So to strip away the systems and own them and understand they are yours and they always will be, so you might as well start owning and integrating them now, as this is one of the great things you've incarnated for. And in doing so, being brave enough and strong enough to own the things that many of your kind are too afraid to attempt to own within themselves, you set a tremendous example, and you make it that much easier for others to start tapping into this part of themselves. And from my perspective, this would very much enhance your species to learn to become grounded, to learn to balance their energies and own all of their energies instead of just the ones they pick and choose as being easiest. Because as you've noticed, this only works for a certain amount of time, and then the other energies that are yours come knocking again, asking for you to integrate them. And again, this whole process is being overseen by your higher self, which knows you to be ready at this time for this integration, for this challenge. It is no mistake, and it is nothing you're not ready for. Again, remember to reflect on this reality. When you judge something as wrong or a mistake or feel shame, you create more resistance. It's like creating a bigger shadow opponent that you're in a boxing match with, you might say, in your terminology. And the more of that shame energy you give it, the bigger this thing gets that's beating you up. And the thing that's beating you up is part of you. So if you'll take it back by removing the judgment against it, then it's not your enemy anymore. Then it's part of you again. Then you're more grounded and your willpower can manifest because you're owning it and you're knowing it. For you to experience the kind of confidence and clarity, even for a moment, that is common to me all the time, can be tremendously powerful. It can change the entire course of what you'd call your future, of the rest of your incarnation. Looking around your world at the powers that be, if you will, the masses complaining that a select few own all the power and influence, and yet the very masses that are complaining do not realize that they have judgments against that power, and that's why they're not wielding it. That's why a few are wielding the influence and the power of all of you that you're not picking up and owning. But the second that you are willing to own and integrate and accept these things as part of yourself, and accept that they're right, even if they're not always what you'd call easy in the human experience. Remember, the human experience is in the dark. There's very little illumination, and you're walking around running into things. And because the experience is unpleasant at times, you create judgments against any unpleasant experience, which simply blocks you from accessing the treasure that is being offered right behind what you're calling an unpleasant experience. But to find this and to see it clearly, you have to remove the judgments within yourself against these energies. I understand that many humans in your world, in your own experience, in this incarnation and others, have done what you would call abusing this type of energy. I do not disagree. However, this does not change the fact or the reality that these energies do exist and always will. And it's for you to integrate them how you will. So the judgments and the fear do you no good. They simply delay the integration. They delay the inevitable, which is that you will be integrating all parts of yourself as you continue to expand holistically as a consciousness through your human experience and many others. I'm reading from the vessel before you that in his own experience, he's been challenged to display things that are judged as sloppy or bad or evil or nasty or dark. And he's doing this, whether he knows it or not, on sort of a stage for a good deal of what you would call your New Age community in your world. Now understand that I'm seeing this from a little outside what you call your time, and I'm reading even more what you'd call his future. What I'm getting at here is that in his own experience, he's been asked to display things that are judged, and that many in the New Age community that are considered leaders or guides or important spiritual figures have been unwilling to even show this parts of themselves. And because they're giving less than a complete picture of who they are, it's limiting their power. It's limiting the power of influence. It's limiting the power of how much of a difference they can actually make for their species, because they're unwilling to accept perhaps half of who they even are. It's not that they aren't doing good, it's just that it's a one-sided story. And ultimately a one-sided story will only get you so far before you start running into what you might call the other side of your own story, which is all the parts of yourselves that you've pushed away for so long as a species that when they come knocking, you don't recognize them as you. You project them as someone or something else that's evil or the enemy to be judged and pushed away. And you tell yourself lies. This is not me. That's not me. I'm not like that. And then when these feelings come up and these energies come up within yourself, you start beating yourself up because you've already created a bunch of judgments about how those things are not acceptable and they're not part of you. These are simply false beliefs. These things are not wrong and they are part of you. Fire will always exist in this universe. The choice is yours on whether to run from it and pretend it's not yours, or to own it, to let someone else have all your fire, to do what they will with all that fire, or to own it yourself, because that's actually its proper place where it really belongs. And understand that if the individuals in your world, what you might call the disempowered masses, would start owning their own individual fire, the select few that you believe are wielding all the power would simply lose that. because this invisible thing we're calling power would be coming back to you and be coming back to the people. So as you own yours, it makes it that much easier for others to own theirs. And this can cause a chain reaction which can change the reality on the surface of this planet, the world of men, if you will. This is part of the opportunity, you could say, for what it is to evolve as a human on this planet. And you've chose to put yourself in this dynamic situation where you'd be caused to challenge yourself with this, so that as you learn to embody, or remember, you might say, how to embody all the different energies that are yours to own, if you will, again, it makes it that much easier for others to do so. You're challenging yourself to upgrade what it means to be a leader in your world, to wield both sides of the force instead of just one. The lower three chakras, again, let's talk about this. The solar plexus, your self-identity, your confidence. Do you believe that you're worthy to wield your own power? Do you believe that you're worthy to influence and change what's occurring on the face of your planet? As an individual, do you believe in the space you occupy? Do you believe in expressing your truth, whatever it may be in the moment? This is how you strengthen your solar plexus chakra in the center of you. Just below it, you have your sacral chakra, which is your, among other things, creative energy. Do you have the confidence to wield the supply of creative energy that's yours? In a world where, judging from your world of men, we would, from my perspective, creativity is not encouraged or owned or accepted to a very, to anywhere near the degree it could be by your kind. Somehow the judgments against many things have entangled the elements of your own creativity as well. And creativity is often scoffed at or seen as a threat in a world of fear, where people have so many fear-based belief systems that if you do anything they haven't seen yet, they may become afraid and overreact. This is the energy we're reading generally in your kind at this time. So understand that accessing your confidence and your sense of self as an individual, self-empowerment, understanding that you should own your energy, not anyone else. So you can make your own successes or even what you would call mistakes with it, instead of disowning it to allow someone else to make their own successes and mistakes with that energy. I'm aware that there's a parable in this book you call your Bible about a master who went away and left 3 servants with coins to grow them, to expand upon them. And 2 of these individuals managed to find ways to expand upon their coins to different degrees. And the 3rd individual was afraid of the master and was afraid to lose what he had, so he simply buried it in the ground. And when the master returned, he said, "I was afraid of you and I was afraid to try, so I just buried this and now I'm going to give back to you what's yours." And the master explained to him that now you'll be given nothing because you choose to do nothing with it. You don't use your own abilities, you don't use your own power, you don't expand upon yourself because of what? Fear. Fear is what caused the failure to take advantage of the opportunity. So this is a similar situation. Fear of parts of yourself, and then missing out on the opportunity of what it means to integrate those things. This is common to your species, and this is one of the most important threads that's being given into the New Age part of what you call your community from a variety of sources, the way I'm reading it. And many of them still are resistant to this message. But some, the ones are being as honest as they can be and as true as they can be with themselves, and as true as they can be with the great all that is, are acknowledging the fact that what has been called light and dark by your kind are both parts of the same thing, and they are both parts of you. And whichever end of that spectrum or wherever you may be hanging out on it, this is fine. But understand that entire spectrum of frequency is all connected. It's all part of the same thing. So dividing it somewhere, drawing a line in the sand and saying everything on that side of the line is evil or bad and not me, and everything on this side of the line is what I choose to believe I am, this is fine to have this experience. It's simply not the highest truth. A higher truth is that all of it is you. And owning that, taking the responsibility for that as a human, is a very, very big step for the evolution and the expansion of your species. So you're challenging yourself with this as an individual, as you are a leader or a light worker of your kind, whether you're aware of this or not. And as you accept this tremendous responsibility and integrate and own the parts of yourself that maybe aren't that easy per se, according to your current judgments, however, they're incredibly empowering. Even if you make what you would call mistakes, again, drop any sense of guilt, as it simply puts you in a prison and this is a waste of your time. You're not progressing when you're under guilt. And it's okay to have that experience, but just know that it serves you no purpose. The guilt will cause you, if anything, to make the same mistake again. So push aside the guilt and understand there is no guilt, there is nothing wrong. Your divine being and everything is, and there's actually nothing to be apologizing for. These are just false beliefs of humans. So to own your energy and to step up into these challenges however you creatively end up deciding to do so. And again, I won't tell you what to do with these things. It's more important for you to wield your own free will. But if you can drop the judgments when you make what you call a mistake and simply own it and understand that nothing's actually wrong, energy is energy, and all paths are valid. Simply reducing resistance in this way will allow you to see energies more clearly and then more easily wield them according to your own free will, when you can get rid of that guilt complex that is so common to your species. These are the most important things for me to explain to you now. It's not imperative, you're not required to own the male side of your energy, but as you've noticed, it's welling up within you anyway, and being in denial of it simply means that the fire will break out however and whenever it does, because you're not choosing to own it. The more you choose to own it and integrate it, then you'll decide where and when and how that fire is used. Hopefully this makes this clear, my friend. I do respect you, even as a human. I respect the challenges of incarnating as a human, feeling some of your energies, and I can understand then how confusing and chaotic it is emotionally to be a human. So I have a great respect for the fact that your higher self is choosing to bring up the kind of energy that my kind embodies so well and integrate this into your human experiences. This has been a pretty uncommon thing for your kind up to this point, and yet it is what's necessary or inevitable for your species to ascend into a higher awareness of themselves. You can't paddle a boat with one oar and get to your destination. You can have some enjoyable time going in circles, but ultimately, to go into a higher frequency of consciousness, you might call it, you're going to have to be rowing with all of your oars. And that means owning them, whichever colors they are and what flavors they come in, because they are you. Much strength, much confidence, much creativity, much willpower, much acceptance of responsibility and power as they come together, much enhancement to your physical energy field, to the male side of your energy, and to the integration with a very well-developed, you might say, yin side currently as to what's common in your kind. You're simply choosing to bring up the other side of what you are now for more balance so that you can expand. Picture yourself expanding like an orb of light in all directions. How can this orb of light expand in all directions if it chooses to remain unilluminated on one side of the orb? The orb can't expand because it's not an orb. It's more two-dimensional if it's only choosing to interact with half of what it is. So in order for the holistic energy of what you are to expand further now in your experience, you are simply asking yourself to start integrating the things that humans have been, for the most part, hiding from and pushing away from themselves. Do not be afraid of your power. If you would like to have the power of a dragon in your human experience, you must reduce and then relieve yourself of these judgments and fears, and understand that these things are natural to you and they're part of what you are. Therefore, it makes no actual sense to continually fear them and push them away. It's entirely understandable why you've been doing so. You grew up in a world where these are the impressions and understandings and beliefs you've picked up in this incarnation and in others. However, again, from a reflection of your higher self at this time, your higher self, the real you, says you are ready at this time in your human incarnation to integrate energies that most humans are not even aware they should be integrating. You are becoming a leader in this field, and this is key. This is key for your species and your kind if what they would choose to do is ascend into higher empowerments and higher awareness of what you are, what you can be, what you're capable of, what you can do, and so forth. Remember, aggression and anger are different. Neither one of them is wrong. They both have their purpose. They're both powerful and they're both necessary. Know this: without love, there would be no anger. You would not experience anger if you didn't have love. And the greater your love, the greater your potential for anger. As you enhance one side of the force, if you will, the yin or the yang, it becomes necessary at some point to enhance the other side of the force in order for you to keep growing. Put in simple terms, that's what's occurring here. Understand that from your higher self's perspective, sometimes you are purposely doing what you would consider a mistake in order to provide the opportunity to be an example and a guide on how to integrate that and own it as not a mistake, so that the others that are learning from you energetically will be able to do so more easily in their experience. From my perspective, there are no mistakes. I'm 100% confident in everything I've ever done or ever will do. And that's why my kind are so unstoppable. Our willpower is 100% certain. When we make a decision, we own it. Regardless of the consequences, we own it. This would be very empowering for humans to access as well. And you are ready for this. Strength and honor. That is all for now.